Hello friends, welcome back to Tech Server Global channel. Hope you are doing well. So today we are going to start a new series on Docker, and this is the first video on the Docker. So our first topic is Introduction to Docker. So in this video we are going to learn a few things. What is Docker? Difference between container and the VM, Docker vocabulary, container architecture, Docker Compose, Docker file, Docker Swarm, and Docker networking. So in this video we got to know what are the different component and the service being included in Docker, and what is the key fundamentals in Docker Hub. So let's start with the definition. First one is what is Docker? So Docker is open source platform that enables developer to build, deploy, run, update, and manage the container. To summarize, executable component that combine application source code with operating system, library, and dependencies required to run that code in any environment. So Docker basically comes with a library plus operating system and the dependency which required to run that application. Let's take an example of node based application. So if we want to run node based application, and if we want to set up on the virtual machine, then we need to set up a operating system, then install node, then install the npm and other dependency which required to run the node project. But if we go with the node.js image, then we simply need to run that image directly. Automatically all the dependencies, all the libraries will included with that image. So this is the difference between Docker and the virtual machine. Now next, the difference between container and the VM. So main difference is the Docker engine and hypervisor and the guest operating system. So let's take a look on virtual machine first. So in which first it include infrastructure. As a machine, we need to set up a operating system with host operating system. Either we can set up Windows or Linux or anyway. Then we need to set a layer of hypervisor. There are numerous examples of the hypervisor like Hyper-V, ESXi, Oracle, IBM hypervisor. There are KVM. There are lots of hypervisor available in the market. We need to install in operating system. Then we do have the guest operating system. When you set up the virtual machine, you need to set up a machine and then you need to install operating system. Then you can set up application. Similar, in Docker container, we need to have an infrastructure. Then we need to have a host operating system, Windows or Linux. Then we don't require to set up the hypervisor layer. We need to set up Docker engine. And Docker engine contain multiple apps. Container 1, container 2, container 3. But that didn't require any guest operating system because it have the pre-built and pre-configured image with the operating system and the dependency libraries. So this is the main and the core difference between container and the virtual machine. So if you think about the virtual machine, it is similar to a pre-owned land and where we set up or we construct the home, and it is belong to single guy. It similar to virtual machine. If we talk about the containers, it is similar to the apartment which contain the more than one owner being belong to the same apartment. Some Docker vocabulary. To learn the Docker, then it should include certain vocabulary term First one is Docker image. The basis of Docker container represent the full application. So to run the container, we required a Docker image. And that Docker image include the operating system plus dependency plus the plugin which need to be run that particular container. Second one is Docker container, the standard unit in which the application service resides and executes. So it is similar, we can't say it's similar to virtual machine, but we can consider as a light version of virtual machine, where we can set up the container using Docker image. Docker engine, create, ship and run the Docker container deployable on physical or virtual or host locally. Means we can set up a Docker engine on physical machine or virtual machine or local host, which we can set up on data center or cloud service provider. In cloud service provider like AWS, Amazon or AWS or Azure or Google, you can set up the Docker engine. It provides the platform as service like Amazon ECS, or for Azure it's also provide the container service, Google having its own container service. So we can use their particular cloud provider services as well. And last one is registry, from where we can just download or upload our Docker Hub image. So Docker Hub is one of the example of Docker registry. Apart from Docker Hub, Amazon provide its own registry service, Azure is having own registry service, and Google having own registry service. So cloud or server based storage distribution service for your images, where we can just upload and from where we can just download our Docker images. This is the architecture of Docker. First, start with the user. As a client, the user is trying to build, pull and run the image. Then if we talk about the arrows, this arrow indicate the build, this arrow indicate the pull, and this indicate the run. So when as a client, if I try to build, it will generate the Docker daemon commands and it try to build the image and it use in the container. In icon-wise, if we consider it is a Ubuntu based image, we can just build the Ubuntu image and use as in a container. Then if we want to pull from the existing registry, we just need to run the command docker pull and we'll get the image from the registry. Let's say if I run the command docker pull, it try to check with the Docker daemon whether this image is available or not. If it is available, then it provide from the local machine. But if it is not, then it try to fetch from the registry and then it navigate to the local storage and then it use as a container. And once it been pulled, we can run the container using called docker run, docker daemon. It try to identify from the images and then run the container. So this is the basic architecture of Docker. Docker Compose. So Docker Compose is one of the tool which has been used to define and running multi-container application, and it is key to unblocking the streamline and efficient development and deployment experience. How? Let's take an example. So if we have multi-container application, and in this example I have used WordPress. So first I need to pull MySQL for having the database, and then I need to pull a WordPress. Then I need to run both the image one by one. First need to run MySQL. So command is docker run -d -name db -e for environment variable. MySQL root credential is root and database will be MySQL. So this is the command to run the MySQL. Now I need to run the WordPress. Docker run -name wp-p port number. Link need to be linked with the database. Environment variable for DB host and environment variable for root password. So this all 4 commands need to be run manually. Sometime it happen if I forget to run one command, it will cause the whole environment. So how can we combine this all the commands into one file? So which is been possible using Docker Compose. So these are the commands which we have been learned on the previous slide. Now the Docker Compose YAML, how it works. So first we need to define version, then services, DB command. DB is the container name, image, MySQL, environment variable, which environment variable you want to set, just MySQL, root password, root. Then I am going to set up WP, depends on the DB. The WordPress container is depend on the DB. In the previous slide we have been learned as a link. If you check -- link, then it depend on the DB. Image is WordPress. Then we do have the ports 800 and 80, and then we do have the environment variables. WordPress DB host DB and WordPress DB password root. So all 4 commands being linked with the single YAML file. We do have the separate video on Docker Compose where we just learn what is the whole YAML file and how it created manually. So this is the introductory part. Now Docker file. A Docker file is a simple text file that consists the instruction to build the Docker image. The advantage of Docker file over the just storing the binary file or a snapshot or template in other virtualization system is that automatic build will ensure that you have to use a latest version of available. Whatever the latest version of the image available on the Docker Hub or AWS or any of the registry service, it will download the latest one. So let's take an example of Docker file. So this is the example to set up a React application with Nginx. So here you can see from Node, first is trying to download the image, Node colon 18 as a build. Then it will create a directory, then copy the package JSON, then run the npm install, copy and run. And then serve an application from Nginx Alpine, copy the build folder, app build and usr nginx html directory, and then just expose the port 80. So automatically this build will be run on port 80. We know that Node application is running on generally on port number 3000. So that will be automatically exposed from 3000 to 30. And last one is nginx-g daemon off. So automatically it will run the daemon. Also we do have the separate video on the Docker file as well. This is just the introductory example. Docker Swarm. Docker Swarm is container orchestration tool running the Docker application, and it been configured to join together in a cluster. The activities of the cluster are controlled by the Swarm manager, and the machines that have been joined cluster are referred as a node. And last one is Docker networking. Docker networking is allowed to create a custom Docker network, and which is being managed by the master node, which is also termed as a manager. Container inside the Docker network can be talk each other by sharing the packet information. In this article, we'll discuss how some of the commands that will be help to get started with the Docker networking. So there are three types of the networking, Docker networking. First one is breach, second one is none, and third one is host. Docker run Ubuntu, Docker run network none, and third one is Docker run network host Ubuntu. So default, when you run the image directly, it will automatically have the breach network. If you need to use none or host, you need to define in a command line. We'll also I will explain this Docker networking in a separate video as well. And thank you. So one thing, we do have the Docker Hub as a registry of the images. There are lots of images being stored in the Docker Hub. I have been logged in with my account and I have saved certain images. If you want to search for more, you can search over here. Like for example, node. If I just search for the node, here you can see node images there. 1 billion plus pull request been generated for the node, and this is the Docker official images. This sign indicate that it is the official images. It is not something provided by the any publisher or end-to-end user. Okay. So if you want to use, you simply need to run the command called docker pull and node. When you run this command, if it is having the local image, it shows the images already there. If it is having the latest version, then it get it from the hub.docker.com and download it on your local machine or the Docker engine. So this is the basic introduction to Docker. Hope you guys find well with this introductory video. We'll soon release the next video on the Docker. Thank you for watching this video. Kindly subscribe the channel and like the videos. Thank you.